First things first, it's been brought to my attention that we do in fact get an answer to why mothers always die on the island, albeit in a way that I still find pretty funny, which I'll get to. In any case, the counter is now lowered back to 65, though frankly I'm still impressed that I lasted this long until this happened. Ah, great, a Desmond flashback. Help us through this, true hero of the show. It's earlier than we've seen him before as he finishes his vow of silence and is accepted into a monastery.
Welcome, brother. Thank you. Brother?
Yes, we are actually getting an entire flashback to explain why Desmond calls everyone brother. And you thought having an origin story of Jack's tattoos was pushing it. After a bit showing that the monastery makes its money with wine, a guy walks in and punches Desmond in the face. He's the brother of a woman Desmond was engaged to until he disappeared, and he explains that he got drunk and met a monk, so he figured he was fated to be a monk too. Seriously, that's the whole explanation. I trust I don't have to spell out how stupid that is. It also doesn't help that the woman has a hilariously fake Scottish accent, especially since she's playing against the genuine Scot Henry Ian Cusick. The whole thing gets Desmond to get drunk, which gets him kicked out of the monastery. We also see a picture of the head monk with Eloise, and there's even a close-up to make sure we notice it. And it ends up meaning absolutely nothing, and we never learn what their connection is. His last job is to load some wine into a car, and it turns out it's Penny's car, and this is how they first met. And for once, I'd actually say this is giving us too much. This kind of thing would be good if it added to our understanding of them, but this really doesn't, leaving us with the impression that the whole point of this flashback, like I said before, was just to show us why Desmond calls people brother, and it's now way too late to be devoting so much time to something like that. The island story opens with Desmond's latest vision of Charlie's death. Charlie and Hurley are arguing about whether Superman or the Flash would win a race, and incidentally, Hurley's completely accurate going by the DCAU, so shut up, Charlie. He then steps on a tripwire, and despite running into Danielle's traps twice before, he's stupid enough to immediately take his foot off it, resulting in an arrow hitting him in the throat in a very graphic shot that I still can't believe was allowed to air on network TV. Sometimes this show is good to me. A few more random images follow, so he goes to ask Hurley about them.
Where's the wire?
You should still be able to find it on Amazon. Seriously, the greatest show in TV history. You're missing out if you haven't seen it. Actually, the first part of the vision was Hurley pulling on the cable, and this time he actually wants what he saw to happen, though he doesn't explain why. I'll buy it. Getting rid of Charlie is kind of its own reward. Kate lets Sawyer know that Jack saw them having sex, but she still refuses to do it again. And then Desmond gets Jin to also come on the trip since he was in the vision. And here's where we really start the central problem of this story. What's called among time travel fans a predestination paradox. Desmond's visions before this were of things that were going to happen no matter what he did, but now suddenly he's clearly seeing things that would never have happened if he hadn't seen them in the first place. It's really irritating to suddenly get this change in how his ability works, and it casts a big shadow over the whole story. There's a really nice scene for Charlie as he first resists coming on this trip since he instantly guesses that Desmond saw him die again. But Desmond tells him that it's really about someone coming to the island since he saw a parachutist too, so that gets him on board. Meanwhile, Kate tries to get Jack to, I believe the popular term is fuck her brains out, but he doesn't bite because he would rather hang out with Juliet. So Kate goes running off to Jacob, Sawyer, and has sex with him. The word you're looking for here is slut. Desmond's group sees a helicopter crash in the ocean, and then a beacon on a parachute lands in the jungle. And Desmond now wants to go blindly walking through the jungle right where a lot of Danielle's traps are, forcing Charlie, of all people, to be the voice of reason. I was so excited that this was a Desmond episode. Why is this happening? Jack and Sawyer play ping pong because God knows we haven't spent enough time on that. At least this time there's some purpose, as Jack shares enough details about last night for Sawyer to figure out what Kate was up to. Desmond's group finds a backpack that fell out of the helicopter, including a satellite phone which promptly dies, and a Spanish copy of Catch-22, so they have an excuse to call the episode that. Oh, and inside it is the picture of Desmond and Penny.
So why'd you jump me last night?
What?
Was it because you saw the doc hanging out with Juliet?
It is not like that.
It's not. You ain't gotta use me, Freckles. All you gotta do is ask.
And let me be clear, we're supposed to sympathize with Kate here. I call bullshit. Desmond reveals that he's been hoping the whole time that the parachutist was Penny, and then the argument about the Flash and Superman begins. Desmond decides to save Charlie and then says he's worried that he failed a test. They find the parachutist, but it's not Penny, the implication being that this is because Desmond saved Charlie against what the Vision showed him. And may I remind you, by the time that happened, this woman was already on the island, meaning we're supposed to buy that his saving Charlie just magically changed her from Penny to whoever this is. And even for a show that plays as fast and loose as Lost does with this kind of thing, that is just imbecilic. Am I wrong? Am I missing something that lets this make perfect sense? Help me out here. Anyway, she still recognizes Desmond, and there's your cliffhanger. My score for Catch-22 is 3 out of 10. Quite disappointing for a Desmond episode, as he's usually like the Doctor on Voyager, the one person we can always count on to pull us through whatever crappy story is around him. But here he just can't do it. The flashback completely wrecks his character with its ludicrous story of how he became a monk, painting him as someone with so little sense of self that he should have been in the nut house next to Hurley. And the island story isn't much better, relying on a use of his visions that goes against everything we've seen so far. Thankfully, this is really the only time this happens with him, as I recall.